Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to One-on-One Conversations with Harness You. Today, every day is a great adventure, but today is an especially good one because we have Tess Brigham here. Tess is a licensed psychotherapist and coach that focuses on millennials. And I've had the privilege of working with Kate, both facilitating a panel and working with her on a meetup. And, she's just a pretty amazing lady. That's pretty much what I can say. And, I was going to go into this long thing and yet, you know what, Tess, you're just one of those people that cares. And you've gone through a career pivot yourself. You totally understand all of this. And so I'm just going to kind of say welcome. Thank you for joining us. And let's just kind of dive into some of the backstory here because you have a really interesting backstory. And so I'm just going to say, Tess, can you
Yes.
share your backstory of how you became a therapist?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. So my goal when I was a kid, my big dream was I was going to work in the entertainment business. I love movies. I toyed with a lot of different things. I thought I was going to be a director for a while. I thought I had all these different ideas, but I did all the high school plays. I was a film major in college. I was an intern at Columbia Pictures for a summer. Like my friends were on the beach and I was working. I went back, I got another internship. I went from job to job to job. And when I was 24, I moved to Los Angeles. I was like, okay, it's time. And I was there for about 3 years, and I worked for a talent agency, and then I worked for this manager who loved me, wanted to promote me, thought I was great, and she really believed in me. And at the same time, I was truly miserable. LA, I'm a Northern California girl, so I
Me
never
too.
dealt with LA at all. But I was getting used to it. I had friends, I had this career, but I was truly miserable. And there was no reason from the outside looking in, there was no reason I should feel so miserable, but I was going into the bathroom and crying every day. And I just didn't know what was going on. And I had what now I can see as a quarter life crisis. But at the time, even though I was 27, I felt like I had spent my entire life with this one dream, this one goal that I had. And that was how I identified myself. That was my sense of self. And the idea of giving up on this dream, giving up on this goal to become whatever this thing is that I wanted to, it felt impossible. But I just hit a wall.
Yeah.
A lot of it had to do with losing a very good friend of mine at 27. My college roommate passed away. And there's something, death, tragedy, crises, stuff like this. It makes you open your eyes and say, life is short and I do not want to be miserable. So her passing inspired me to move back home. But I moved back home with my mother and, I really had nothing and I was trying to rebuild. And what I did know from that time is that I spent some time really thinking about what is it that I like to do? What was it about what I was doing? I was working with actors. I was like, what is it about it that I liked? And I hated all the Hollywood stuff. And I kind of didn't, it felt like a little shallow. It was interesting and fun, but all of this silliness that we talked about felt really shallow. I really just liked talking to people. And so that's what got me thinking about, what about psychology? What about becoming a therapist? At that point, I had never taken a psychology class ever. Like I had taken one, it was psychology of statistics in college. So
Oh, my deepest condolences.
yeah, and it was
I
a
hated
math
statistics
class.
in college.
Took it for math. It was horrible. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take this intro to psychology class. And I was there at a junior college looking around. I was like one of the oldest people there. The professor was like, who are you and why are you here and how did you get here and what are you doing? And I explained it to him and he's like, he read all my stuff and he's like, you have something, you're smart, you have something, go do this if you want to do it. So that inspired me and I applied for graduate school and got in, and Went through the process. Becoming a licensed therapist is not an easy process by any means. It is a
No,
long,
it's not. It's quite a
arduous
commitment.
journey. But looking back at the time, I will say that, of course, I had years of freaking out, not knowing what I did, seeing my friends in the entertainment business move forward, make more money. And here I was, like, making no money, working with people, working for free. But I am so eternally grateful that I did it. I cannot imagine being there in LA and being miserable and feeling stuck in this. And that's what I say to people, like, work, we all have to work a long, long time. It's a big, big part of our lives. And I feel so grateful that I'm not miserable by my work. And even the days that are hard, and right now things are really hard, I still truly enjoy what I do. And I feel like this is what I was meant to do.
It's interesting because my very first interview in this series was with Robert McPhee, and we were talking about values and visions,
Hmm.
and how important that is to align your values with what it is that you want to do, because it becomes less arduous.
Hmm.
And I know when I started Harness You, this just really became aligned with what I wanted to do. And yes, there are hard days, and being an entrepreneur right now is really scary. But man, I wouldn't trade it for the world. And
Hmm.
I totally get, you feeling like an apple in a sea of oranges, or
Yeah.
however you want to do it. The other day I was also talking to Letty Emiraj, who quit a 20-year career in tech to become a wellness coach.
Mm.
And all of these people that we've been interviewing are really, really validating exactly what you just said. You have to find something that just makes you thrive inside,
Hmm.
because if not, it's just going to become a very long, long journey.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that in act 3 of my career I get to do something that I love. And folks, I want to put one sidebar in there. And I forgot to do this in the intro. If if you are not connected to Tess's Instagram account, you really need to be. And I'll tell you why. She and her team have put together the most inspirational melange of things, both visual and quotes, that I'm telling you, every time I need a shot in an arm, I just go to her site, and I pick up one, and luckily, she's on my feed, so I get to see it every day, and it, they just help. They really, really help, and I just love what you and your team are doing, and it's helping us along the journey. And speaking of the journey, you you went on this journey to come from one place to another. What are some of the things that you took forward from that journey?
Hmm. Um, that the biggest lesson is that you never start over again. You never really start over again. I think that I had a lot of fears around. I know at the time, I'm now in my 40s, and so looking back at 27, I'm like, oh God, that felt like a long
An eon
time. But it
ago?
did. But it did feel at 27. I did feel kind of like I had put in all this time, but I was really fearful that, oh my God, I wasted time. I wasted all of these years pursuing this dream that wasn't meant to be. And now I have to start all over again. And I always tell my clients, you never start all over again. You're never starting all over again. The reality is that my experiences working in LA, they have helped me be a better therapist. My experiences, um, and just some of the funniest things is that as a therapist, a big part of my job is scheduling people, like scheduling people, keeping people straight. And that was what I did for years as working for an agency. It's like keeping these actors straight and making sure people are going to the right place and everyone has the right information. Like, it's funny because now I go, well, I can do all this. I can balance all these things because I know how to do it. So anything that you do, any odd tool or skill that you pick up along the way, it will come back around and it will serve you in some way, shape, or form. So while I had to start from point A to start to become a therapist, I had to take the intro to psychology course. I was bringing with me a huge, huge breadth of knowledge of what I had gained before. And that stuff, that counts. It really, really does count. So you're never ever starting over. The person that you mentioned before that went from tech to wellness coach, all of his, what he's gained from tech has absolutely helped him in the wellness coach. And the kind of wellness coach he is today is because of his 20 years in tech. So
Yeah,
none of that should be,
Letty takes an amazing amount of knowledge with her,
oh, her,
and
sorry.
oh, no, you don't worry. um, it's interesting that you say that because, like yourself, my first job out of college was working in the advertising department of a bank, and then I went to go become a project manager for, a steel case distributor, and had a 20-year career, working on the technology side of Steelcase and doing that. And then, here after my divorce, I jerry-rigged and told everybody I'm quitting my job to go work in the tasting room. And yet I learned so much in each one of those places, even before I came here. And it's really interesting. I too went back to school. When I was recovering from a knee surgery. And it's really telling that you had the same experience that I did. My junior college teacher was very instrumental in helping me figure out what I wanted to do next. It was funny. It was just this one simple sentence is like, why don't you take all of your sales knowledge and and do something for social good? And it just was this simple question, but it's like a lightning bolt that went through me because I was stuck in my own little box. And sometimes we just need somebody else, an outside perspective to say, how about this? And, there's going to be a lot of people retooling, with everybody being out of work, especially in
Mhm.
retail and hospitality, that are going to need people like you to say, well, how about this or how about that? Because we do kind of get stuck in this is what I know to be true. And yet, um, how can we how can we help folks reimagine their skill sets in a different way or in a different place?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I always encourage my clients to, you always have a couple things rumbling in your mind. You always have a couple ideas, a couple things that have been in the back burner that you've
Hmm.
sort of said, no, I shouldn't do that. And I think it feels very scary to people, which I get, which is to kind of go and make this transition and say, okay, now I'm going to work here. But that's the beauty of classes. I always tell people, like, take a class. Like, that junior college class cost me, $30 or something. It was
Yeah, exactly.
expensive. Like, and I just took the class, and I knew from there that I'd either like it or not, and that would help me or give me some idea of where to go. So I'm always telling people, careers should be thought of like as this journey or a process. Everyone keeps thinking of it's this destination and this title of this is the thing I need to get to. And it doesn't work like that. It's a constant evolution and journey and road, and it goes like this and it goes all over the
Yeah,
place.
exactly.
And I think that, we're constantly reinventing ourselves. We're constantly changing and growing as people. And so what we want to do and how we want to spend our time is constantly evolving and changing as well. And so the first part of it is give yourself permission to explore. Give yourself time and
What a
energy to
pearl. What a
explore
pearl.
what is out in the world. I call it like explore career land. When we are traveling, we really give ourselves permission to explore different things, to kind of make mistakes, to get lost, to go here, to go there. And I said, so you have to be able to do that in career land, which means that you take classes you don't really like, you get coffee with a few people in an industry you're thinking about, you're like, oh, I don't think about, I don't know about that. You read a book or two, you just do these things and you start to explore and see, what is it that I keep coming back to? What is it that's really, really exciting me? And that this is the thing I can't get out of my head.
Yeah.
And so once you're there, there's and then you can take some real baby steps towards getting there. I think that we forget that we have a lot of contacts. We have people that we can go and call and say, hey, can I try this? Can I do this? It was funny, many years ago, my husband got laid off from his job, and we had talked about this. He loves to cook. And we had talked at the time, the food truck thing was huge. And we talked about, like, maybe this is your opportunity to have a sandwich shop or a food truck or do this and that. And so a friend of ours had a restaurant here in the Bay Area called Benchmark. It's a pizza restaurant. It's a great place. It's here in the East Bay. And they had my husband come in once a week and do prep work and, for nothing.
Hmm.
But he was like, great. And he was able to do that for a couple months. And he was like, this is hard. And I just enjoy cooking for myself and my family. I don't want to do this professionally. And so for him, and it's the same thing, it's like, this is the part that people don't realize, the power of being able to say, oh, this is just something I want to do. It's not a profession. Okay, great. Because suddenly my husband could stop looking at food trucks. He could stop analyzing it. Like, it was like, oh, good, I can get rid of that now. And now go back and focus on what are the things that I really, really want to do. So there's a tremendous amount of value in taking the class that you don't like than there is the one that you do like. Because the minute you're able to get rid of an option, a choice, you're able to go, great. And I can do that with a lot of peace. I feel like, especially for me with going to LA and having that experience, I never want to sit here and go, God, I should have tried to go to LA. I should have tried the business. I should have pushed myself to do that. I don't sit up at night and worry about that, because I did.
Yeah.
And now it doesn't eat away at me. And I think that's the part that really gets people is that they get very focused on I got to get to this one answer, this one career goal. And it's like, well, no, getting rid of all of the noise around it is powerful as well and important.
Wow, that is very a powerful knowledge share right there, and thank you for that. And especially in the time of social media where everything looks so perfect,
Hmm.
and you don't see failure on social media. The fact that you can just offer that permission is huge, because there is such social pressure to be perfect,
Yeah.
and yet perfect does not exist. And so it's this paradox that we're constantly struggling with. So I'm glad that you just poked a hole in that balloon and just deflated the heck out of it. I'm looking over on my other screen, and it says, one of the other things is some of the tools, and life skills that people take forward, and everybody's talking about empathy and collaboration, and I'm a strong proponent of using empathy, and I would just love to get your feedback on that and why
Mhm.
it's important.
Yes, empathy is a topic that I love to talk about. And I've gone out into the world and given a talk to leaders about the power of empathy, and that this is the number one skill that you have to have as a leader to be a really good leader. Because the thing about empathy is, to understand empathy, you have to understand sympathy. And people get it mixed up much more than they think they do, which is, sympathy is that, oh, poor you. Oh, seeing that person across the room going, oh, yeah, I'm glad I'm not in their shoes. Bless her heart, right? Empathy is the ability to stop and say, okay, I can put myself in your position. I can see where you're coming from. I might not I might not live your life, but I can see how incredibly hard things are for you. And I hear you and I see you and I recognize it, and I recognize your perspective. And that's the part that is really, really tricky about this. It's funny because I was in the Chronicle last Sunday randomly, and because a reporter called me and wanted to talk about the various generations at work. Right? Why are the generations angry at each other during this crisis? Because each one is pointing at the other one, right? Saying it's those millennials that are out partying, which it's not the millennials; it's a different generation. Um, and then it's millennials and younger generations saying my boomer parents won't stay inside or wear masks. And I was saying to him, I said, the big issue that you have to think about is is that we got to stop blaming each other. We got to stop pointing fingers at each other and saying it's them, it's this, it's you, it's this. And it's like, we have to have a tremendous amount of empathy for each other, of that each person, why they're out and about. We have to be able to see that from a place of love and thoughtfulness and kindness, and say there's a reason why they're out. Now, does it make it okay for them to be out and violating these rules? No. I'm not accepting that. What I'm saying is that it's not acceptance. It is being able to say and look at each other without judgment, without anger, and say, I empathize with you. I know you're struggling. I know you're feeling this way. I'm in this too, but you need to now come inside with me, right? So empathy it's huge. You need it in any kind of marriage and partnership. It's sort of the biggest thing that I talk about when I work with couples, is like, you have to be able to put yourself in that other person's shoes and say, I see why you're upset. I can see why you're upset, and I'm willing to do that. And I think that we struggle with empathy because it makes us feel like, well, that makes me weak, which it doesn't. And I think Brene Brown and her research on vulnerability and shame has really
Oh
shown
God,
us.
she's my hero.
Yes, I love her. And she has really shown us that vulnerability, it's very powerful to be vulnerable. It's not something that makes you weak. But you have to be able to let down your guard, let down your defenses, and say, even though I may not agree with you, I can see how this bothers you, or I see how this is. And so when it comes to leaders, especially during this time, it's the ability, your employees just need for you to hear from you, to say, I know you're struggling. I feel your struggle. Tell me about your struggle. Tell me about what's going on with you. You don't have to solve all the problems. You don't have to do any of that. But good leaders, they use this empathy as a way of being able to connect with people on a different level, which is really, really powerful. I can go on and on. I've done whole talks about this. I can go on and on about this, but this is number
No,
one, the most
these are
important thing.
great. And
Yeah.
um, we're talking a lot about empathy, and I think we're going to have to show a lot of empathy as
Mhm.
people retool. I mean, there's a lot of people. Well, you and I discussed this yesterday before, we got on this interview, is, there's a lot of people making a lot of changes really rapidly. And one of the, as I was explaining some of my feelings to Tess, I said, this is kind of reminding me a little bit about grief. And it was interesting. You and I shared this conversation about grief, and I would love for you to share what you shared with me, because I thought it was so profound. And yeah, that's the right word. I'm gonna go with profound.
Yeah, we were talking because what's been so interesting about this is that how people felt, the mindset of most people on the 16th, when the shelter in place came into effect in the Bay Area, and was very different. It's very different than how we feel today. And that what we're witnessing everybody go through are these various stages of grief. And the Harvard Business Review wrote an article about this called What You're Experiencing is Grief. It's been passed around. Maybe you've heard of it, but if you want to learn more, just look it up on their website. But it's very much like, we had the stages of grief are denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and acceptance. And when the clients that I've worked with over the years that struggle with grief, what I always tell them is that you will go through all these stages at some point, but
Mhm.
it won't be linear. It won't be like you get through this stage and then you're this. It's not phases. You're essentially constantly bouncing back from feelings at all times. And in the beginning, it will be very intense. You will go from sadness to anger, back to bargaining, to back to sadness, back to this, like, you will go and you will have days of acceptance. You will absolutely have days of acceptance, and then feeling very clear. And then boom, sadness comes, hits you. And what happens is people go, well, wait a minute. I was accepting. I was good. I was good yesterday. I was good 2 days ago. Why am I back? What's wrong with me? And it's like, there's nothing wrong with you. That is grief. Grief doesn't make doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't, there isn't a pattern. There isn't a way to do it better than anybody else.
Mhm.
And when I work with clients with grief, I always say to them, because I'm also a coach. And so I'm very much like, let's go, what's your goal? Where are we going? But I will say to them, this is very much, there is nothing I can say to you that will change how you're feeling. So I'm not going to say anything. And it's really about me sitting with them and sitting with their pain and allowing them to have this space to feel whatever they want to feel. And all the things that people think that you should say of like, they're in a better place or it's okay, or we'll get, like none of that serves anybody, right? People just, when they're grieving, they want to feel like someone is seeing and hearing them. And they want to be able to have the same conversation every week because they feel like they can't do this with the people in their lives. So one of the best services you could do for someone who you see who's really struggling with this is to sit and listen. Let them grieve. Let them feel all the feelings that they need to feel. Give them that time and space. I think we really want to go into that problem solving mode, or let me fix it for you and let me do this, let me do that. It's like, that's not really what people need right now. They really, really need someone to say, it's okay that today you cleaned out your closet and did 15 million things. And it's okay that tomorrow you might wake up and want to eat chocolate and watch Netflix.
God bless
And
chocolate and Netflix.
and that's the piece of it too, right? There was a lot of, I think that, and I had this thought too at the beginning of all this. I was like, well, maybe this is my time to like, I can clean out closets. I can work on all these projects. I have stacks of books. Like, oh, this is, I don't have to take my son to school. I don't have to do that. Like all of these things. And here I am just kind of getting through the days, feeling tremendously guilty because I'm, eating chocolate and watching Netflix and not doing these things. And then I was like, you know what, and my clients are struggling with that as well. And I think that's another part of it, which is giving yourself permission that this time of your life, listen, if you are cleaning your closets and writing the great American novel, that is awesome. That's great. That is how you are going through this. But for most of us, right, that we have this collective anxiety. We are collectively as a nation anxious.
Yes.
And when you are anxious, it shows up in people in different ways. And some people anxiously clean, which is great. Other people anxiously, like myself, like to sit and eat chocolate and do other things. And both are okay. Both are fine. One isn't better than the other. So a lot of this is not putting a pressure on yourself to come out of all of this, to come out of when this all ends in, I'm going to be in better shape, or I'm going to be doing this. It's like to be able to come out and feel like, okay, I survived it.
It's funny that you're talking about this because, I'm single. I don't have kids. And what I found last Friday was I was just physically exhausted, because I had been doing a whole bunch of stuff, patching everything up and, like everybody else. And last Sunday, I literally stayed in bed all day and binge watched. I don't even remember what, but it was on Netflix. And you know what? The next day I felt revived and like I could go back to work and do what I needed to do. But I didn't even realize how much I had put myself on empty trying to get through the past week and in dealing with all the business affairs and the constant juggling. And I'm glad you said give yourself permission, because that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're going to find really creative ways, or maybe not so creative ways that, you know what? I think innately we kind of know what we need. Like I know I needed to just recharge.
Mm-hmm.
And I just did literally something mindless all day. And it gave my brain a chance to rest for a day.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also had to do was like, blink, breathe, and watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, there was chocolate involved too.
Well, that's the piece of that you mentioned earlier with Instagram and sort of the culture that we live in, which is we live in a culture of perfection is what you're always striving for. And and the thing is that what I've noticed over the years of just watching, people's Instagram is that when it comes to dealing with like when it comes to this kind of stuff, when it comes to life, that we either should be aiming for, hashtag hustle, work, 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 sleep on the floor, get stuff done, build the company, build this, or we're told you should be trying to have this soulful entrepreneurial business and you should be working 5 hours a week and you should be on a beach. And if you're not making millions of dollars in your sleep, doing this, doing that, right, then like that is sort of the culture of what you see. That's the messages of what you see is either you're working all the time and that is to be applauded, or you've somehow gamed the system and are able to work very little and make millions of dollars. And this is the part that I see is my clients are constantly sort of like, well, I want to be this entrepreneur and I want to have this very soulful business and make all this money and not work that much. And I feel like maybe I should be this person over here working all the time. And our culture doesn't really allow for a lot of balance, because balance isn't interesting. I mean, I hate to say it. Balance isn't interesting.
No, I'm laughing with you, not at you.
Yeah, no, balance isn't interesting. It's not sexy. It's not fun. It's not exciting. Balance is, getting up and being aware. And some days you're going to work harder than others. And, it's doing a little bit every day and trusting at the end of it, you'll be able to see, oh, wow, I got this done, right? That's balance. And balance is losing weight slowly. It's all of these things, but we don't encourage people. And so I think what you're talking about is you had this moment of, I have to balance myself again. Yeah. I have to recalibrate myself again, which means that I've got to figure out, I got to rest. And then once I finish resting, I got to figure out what's next and what is this going to look like and how do I do it? But we feel such guilt by the doing nothing. And doing nothing is actually incredibly good. It's that doing nothing, playing, being mindless, those things are good for you. Now, not all that way, not always, not ever, but right? A chunk of it is good.
Yeah, I one of the goals that I set for myself, and I am an entrepreneur, and let me tell you, it's soulful and it is a lot of work because we do a social benefit company, but my goal at the beginning of the year, or my resolution, was to give myself permission to self-care to the level that we're growing, and I didn't feel guilty about it, because I knew if I didn't do it, then the following week would be non-productive at best, and probably less than that. And so I love that now everybody's saying you give yourself permission. It really is an essential tool for self-care. And I'm just wondering if you have, aside from all the amazing things that you just have been sharing with us here, is what other tools can you share with folks? Because I'm seeing a lot of loneliness. I'm seeing the isolation is starting to really get to people. I know a lot of people are reaching out on Zoom, and God, Zoom's making a boatload of money this quarter, but just, as a human being to a human being, I love that you said maybe sometimes you just need to sit and listen. I mean, that was so wonderful. Any other wonderful pearls of wisdom like that? I know you've got a plethora of them.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that this is what we're experiencing is anxiety, and anxiety is about control. And we get anxious when we don't feel like we have control. Yes. And a big, this is why so many people are anxious. It's a big part of life is that we really don't have as much control as we think we do, right?
Oh, indeed.
And that we have to let go. And this experience, this quarantine and everything that's the virus, what's gone on is there's a lot about control. And so I always encourage people to focus on what is within your control. There's the things that are out of your control that you have to be able to sit with and accept. But there are many, many things that are within your control, which is that if yes, you might be someone who does much better in person with people, and that you hate the video stuff, and that, but I always tell people, like, there's a million different ways to connect with people. I think we get very stuck in this place of, oh, it's got to be a Zoom chat, or it's got to be this, or it's got to be that. It's like, you could get on a phone call with a friend and both take a walk together, just in different parts of the city. You can write letters. That's an old fashioned thing. You can, you can sit on the lawn of a friend, you can wander around your neighborhood. I know that it's limiting. But there are different ways to get out in the world. So it's just about being creative with your time and figuring out what it is that you really need. And all the other things that are within your control in terms of how you set up your house and your home office. I'm amazed by all the clients I have that are like, oh, well, I'm sitting in my closet, or I'm sitting on my, on my kitchen table, or I'm sitting on my couch, or I'm in my bed. And it's like, invest in a good chair and a cheap desk. Invest in
You're right. Put the money in the chair, not the desk.
Because eventually, this will change our society. And I think we will be working home more. Will it be the same? No, but, get the good chair, get a desk, get a setup for yourself, create structure for yourself. If you find that you're struggling with, your attention and distractions, have a morning routine, the same one you had, then go, okay, I'm going to work, and then walk over to your desk and you're starting work. That's the point of the desk. That's your work day. Take breaks, same way that you always do things. You're just doing it within the space of your home, which again, I know is challenging, but it's really thinking about what are the things in my life that I have control over. And the awesome thing is that now we get to kind of exercise during a time that, during the day when we want to, which is really, really cool. If you're a morning and a late night person, then use your afternoons to go on a bike ride or take a walk or exercise or take a nap or whatever it is. Like, what I have some clients who are loving this because they're able to like get up super early and code and do all this work, and then they have their afternoons free, and then they come back and they do some more work. You have this freedom to structure your day differently. So it's really about focusing what's within my control. And then for the things that are out of your control, there's a lot of stuff going on politically. Go on Facebook. There's a lot of people have a lot of feelings. I don't really get that political with things, but I will say that if the news is making you crazy, don't watch so much news. It's a 24-hour news cycle. They are repeating themselves. Find one outlet that you know and trust, and you have to experiment a little bit, but half hour, an hour, figure out what's the enough to keep you informed, but not enough to keep you awake at night. And don't get before bed, right? Really, and focus on right before bed. What are the rituals and the things that I can do that are within my control to make sure that I get good sleep? Because if you don't get good sleep, the anxiety gets worse and everything starts to get worse. And if you feel like there's so much stuff going out, it's so much stuff out of my control. I hate I hate the politics. I hate all the fighting. You want to think globally and act locally. Focus on what is within your control of the sphere of influence that you have in your life, which is, if it's so upsetting to see all these people out of work, it's like, well, then support the people that are in your realm. Support your local restaurants, right? Support the local stores that you love. I paid my cleaning lady, and said, stay home, right? I can't pay everybody. I can't do all these GoFundMes, but I can think about the people that are in my realm and in my life and provide for them as much as I can. And so I don't get caught up in, right, all of the stuff in this and, all these different things. I really think about, okay, how do I influence my sphere and right here, because that's what's within your control.
Wow, this whole conversation has just been so wonderful. And, one of the things that I've been practicing as well, when I go to Safeway to pick up, what I need to do is I take a moment and ask the sales clerk, how you doing today? And thank you for being here. And I'm often shocked that, like, nobody's saying thank you to these
Yeah.
folks. And, they're there. And, one of my best friends is a nurse, and I send her emojis all the time, just thanking her, and I said,
Mhm.
you don't have to answer. You don't have to do anything. Just know I'm thinking about you. I'm hoping you're being safe, and I love you for what you're doing, and God bless you,
Yeah.
and, I'm just going to pass that one on to you
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
God bless you for what you've just been sharing, folks. This is the woman you want to go see. Let's just put it that way. I'll be a shameless claim, no problem. But Tess, thank you so much
Oh,
for
you're
doing
welcome.
all of this. This is so wonderful, and I just really appreciate you taking the time to do this. That was really a gift, and
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, thank
And
you.
oh God, you're like my biggest idol. So no problem. And I'm fortunate in the fact that I get to work with a lot of these folks in the intersection of tech and culture and education and faith and well-being. And these are the people that I know to carry a great deal of knowledge. And you just spoke the truth. So thank you.
Well,
Um,
thank you. Thanks
one
for
other
having
thing
me.
before
Yeah.
one other thing that I just wanted to share with everybody before we go off, though. Originally, I was only going to do this as a 2-week series, and we've been getting such feedback that we're going to be continuing this because it just seems like a lot of what's being shared is really helpful, and that's what we wanted to accomplish as a company and as a group of people just trying to help everybody through. So. Um, we'll be back next week with some other interesting guests as well. But Tess, again, I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care, have fun, and be safe out there, okay? All right, let me just go over here and do this. And